Hello, everybody. Thanks for coming out on your Saturday night. Welcome to a very special episode of Boobies and Noobies. We are coming to you live from North Hollywood. No. I'm your host, Kelly Reynolds, and if you're joining us for the first time, either here for the show or listening to the recording, which will come out next week, a little bit about Boobies and Noobies. We are the podcast that asks novice romance readers to think outside the dick in a box and brave the unbridled world of erotica. So I launched this podcast last June 2018, pretty much around the same time that My Worst Date did. So we kind of had a connection from the very beginning, the ladies and I. I've actually had them on the show before, so if you haven't listened to that before, it's the perfect crossover episode for you to start with after your evening here with both of us. We read probably one of the weirdest fucking books I've ever read in my life. So there's that. Every episode of Boobies and Noobies, I ask someone, a friend, a coworker, sometimes a stranger I meet on Twitter, to read and review their very first romance novel with me, an expert, you might say, at reading romance. So tonight, my beautiful guest joining me is LA actor, improviser, and nanny extraordinaire, Miss Kristen Clement.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Mary Poppins ain't got nothing on me.
Now, Kristen, or Chrissy as I know her, we go way back. We actually grew up down the street from each other in Alameda, California, East Bay, San Francisco area. Oakland. Yeah, there it is. All right, one person from Oakland.
Yay!
Nice to have you. And we go way back. Christy and I, we lived in LA. She's been here a little bit longer. How long now?
Oh, God. 2006.
Okay, a lot longer. I moved here a few years ago, and we kind of reconnected from there.
Yeah.
And she's a brilliant actress, always doing something fun.
You can tell by my face that I'm so confident in my craft, especially the face I just made.
And so obviously I've wanted to have her on the show for a while. I asked her to be a part of the live show. She didn't really know what she was in for, and yet here she is.
Yay!
So I'm so thankful for her to be here tonight. Now, I have been reading romance for about a decade now, and one of the goals of the show is to bring in people who have never read the genre. So before reading the book we're going to talk about tonight, had you read a romance novel?
Nope. I haven't read any. Unless you count Twilight, technically.
Yeah, this is a discussion we have a lot on this show, is Twilight.
It's like baby.
50 Shades of Grey, anything by Nicholas Sparks. These are kind of like the outliers that we discuss in the romance genre.
Yeah.
I like to think of them as gateway romance. Like, it's kind of what, if you like it, oh, maybe I'll give something a little another shot. That is maybe a little bit raunchier.
It's child's play. Child's play. I danced around the Twilight land, and then I was like, oh, this is nice, but meh. And then I also feel like there's like a stigma with the romance novel genre.
Absolutely.
Like, oh, you're by yourself in your bubble bath reading your romance. That's cute. Oh, poor you. So when I'd walk through Barnes and Nobles and I'd go through like the romance novel section, I'd be like, I'm not really supposed to be here. I was going down to
I was just looking for the cooking section.
And the covers are just kind of a thing for me. Like, they're a little frightening. Some of them are just...
Yeah, and I think...
It's like, why aren't you wearing a shirt in the cold on a horse?
That's a common thought a lot of people have. And sort of one of the reasons people stray away from the romance genre is this stigma that we have to hide our sex lives or what we're interested in, or we kind of label them as guilty pleasures. I know we're both big reality TV fans. Yes. I don't like the term guilty pleasure. It's something that we actually talked about on a recent episode of the podcast, is that guilt should not be associated with something that brings you joy, that brings you pleasure. So one of the goals of this podcast is to kind of remove that stigma and make sure you're enjoying what you're enjoying, and there's no reason to be ashamed for it. So
darn tootin'.
Today we will be talking about a wonderful romance. This one's a little bit different. The reason I chose this book is because we typically spend a little bit more time in our episodes going through a novel, kind of digesting the characters, the themes, and we have a very quick spot for you tonight before the ladies of My Worst Date come out. So I wanted to make sure we still got to review a book, but had the right book to have the right amount of time to do it. So the book we're going to be talking about is called My Lady's Choosing, and it is actually an interactive romance novel written by Kitty Curran and Larissa Zageris. And this book was published just last year, April 2018, and it's available on Amazon for $2.99 Kindle edition or $10 paperback. I am a big Kindle fan, but this is a book where I would definitely recommend the paperback.
Yep.
You want the physical copy for this book, and let me tell you why. Are you familiar with the choose your own adventure novels from your childhood? This is that in raunchy form.
Yes.
So
you're going to be doing a lot of flipping.
Yes.
And you want the pages for it.
Yes. There is the very beginning text that reminds you, do not read this book in order. It will not make sense. If people don't know what I'm talking about with the choose your own adventure books, have you seen Bandersnatch on Netflix? Okay, so like instead of choosing your cereals, this or that, it's like, do you want to slap this guy or suck his dick? Like, I mean, that's basically
it's pretty much
what you're getting in this book.
Yeah. True that.
Yeah, had us intrigued. So before we talk about the book itself, let me just tell you that the ladies behind this book, Kitty Curran and Larissa Zageris, this is their second book. They actually had a big viral Kickstarter project called Taylor Swift Girl Detective. And they have another book coming out this fall called For Your Consideration, Keanu Reeves.
I can't wait.
I will always consider Keanu Reeves.
When do you not consider Keanu?
Yeah. So something to look forward to. What's great about this book, and we'll dive into this a little bit further, is that there's so many options. We both read this. We read multiple stories, pathways that you can take in this book, and even just discussing it, we discovered ones that we never came across. So there's so many choices. There's so many different ways the story could go. There's so many different lovers you could experience.
So many lovers.
So it's definitely a lot of fun, something that might be worth like a book club read, especially. So with My Lady's Choosing, let's go ahead and before we even get started talking about the paths that we took, I'm going to let the wonderful actress, Kristen, read the Amazon synopsis for you. That way you get a little taste of what's in store, who some of the players are in this book, and who you are in this book. Because the one great thing about it is that everyone who reads it is playing the same character. You're always going to be playing the same person, and you get to experience different people along the way. But no matter what, you are this lady in waiting.
This lady.
Yes.
All right.
Here we go.
Here's the lady. You are the plucky but penniless heroine in the center of 18th-century society. Courtship season has begun, and your future is at hand. Will you flip forward fetchingly to find love with the bantering baronet Sir Benedict Granville? Or turn the page to true love with the hardworking, horse-loving highlander Captain Angus McTaggart? Or, I know, right? The names alone.
It just makes me think of like Angus beef. Isn't that like, or like, isn't that like a steakhouse?
I mean, meat
Angus
is meat, am I right?
Beef.
Or perhaps race through the chapters of chasing a good and arousing man gone mad, bad and scandalous to know, Lord Garraway Craven.
Oh yeah, I totally went after him. That definitely happened. Yeah.
Or read on recklessly and take to the continent as the traveling companion of a spirited and adventurous Lady Evangeline. Or yet some other intriguing fate. Make choices, turn pages, and discover all the daring delights of the multiple and intertwining storylines. And in every path you pick, beguiling illustrations bring all the lust and love to life.
I mean, if that doesn't have you, like... Yeah, there are the occasional illustrations in this book. Kitty Curran,
yes, there are.
One of the authors, she's actually a comic artist. So there's some graphics, some graphic graphics, if you will.
Very tamed graphics,
yeah.
though.
We will preface this by saying this is definitely not the most explicit book that we've read for this podcast. No. It's more of a PG-13.
Very PG-13.
I think you could say.
It's playful.
Yeah. So we agreed that the best way to probably present this book, because there isn't really one big story to follow, is for us to share a couple stories that we happen to encounter along the way.
Yes.
So how about you get started, and why don't you share the first path you took. We should tell you all that it begins the exact same way every time. It always starts with you as your character in this grand soiree party, and you get to meet kind of a lot of the potential suitors at this party, and then from there decide who you would like to pursue and where you would like to go. So where did you go from the party?
Yes, at the party, I was very intrigued by the Scotsman.
Angus.
Angus. Yes, I was like, oh, okay, Highlander. I'll take that. He's very pretty, and so he works at an orphanage.
Yes, he's very giving.
He's
caring.
very giving. So I like that.
Good.
So I went off with him.
Yeah.
And you know what? I decided early on, I was like, you know what? I'm going to stick with him on the straight and narrow path. If they ask me to choose side B, I'm going to stick with A. Mm-hmm. And, you know, I'm a nanny, so I'm like, I'm going to take care of the kids, and it's going to be about the kids.
This guys, this was like full-on reality for you.
Full-on reality. I was like, maybe this will happen one day. I don't know. Anyway, so I went and I followed homeboy up to the mountains. Angus. And we were at the orphanage, and there was a choice where I could take advantage of him in the barn.
As we do.
As anyone does.
When in Scotland,
flip the skirt. Or the kilt, excuse me. So sorry. So anyway, yes. And I decided to go the dirty road. I was like, you know what? Screw the kids. we're just gonna go for it right here in the barn. But he shut me down, and he was like, what are you doing? Your virtue. I can't. No.
And also like, do your fucking job.
That's exactly what it said. And I think at the bottom of one of the pages, it said, go tend to the children, you hussy. What are you doing? And I was like, oh, she's right.
That's something we will definitely share some specifics from. But one of the funnest things, because that's a word on this podcast, one of the funnest things is that the clues you get at the very bottom of where to choose to go next. Do you choose A or do you choose B? That's probably my favorite part about the book. Like,
please read the one that you pitched to me when she first asked me to read this book. She's like, let me just give you a tidbit of like the choose your own adventure portion. I'm just going to read a little. Yeah. And she read me this, and
we'll just start here. This is at the very beginning, and it'll give you a clue about what you can expect from the tone of this book. Do you accompany your tyrannical employer to the fundraising ball for the Society for the Protection of Widows and Orphans of the War? The company may be atrocious, but balls are fun. If so, turn to page 67. Option A. Or do you run away from Lady Craven only to find yourself with no other means of survival than to sell your young body into the cold, cruel night? If so, do not go any further in this book, for you will be utterly doomed and dead from syphilis within a year. It ends with, sorry, this may be a choosable path adventure, but as a penniless young unmarried woman at the start of the 19th century, your options are somewhat limited. They will get better. Turn to page 67. So you can kind of get a sense for the fun that clearly the authors are having with this. I think this book is intended not only for romance readers, but also people who maybe are the ones that have poked fun at romance or don't know what to read. It's a playful take on it. Yes. So please carry on with Angus.
Oh, Angus.
Yes.
So yeah, eventually I really had trouble also making decisions because I'm an indecisive person in general.
Fair.
And then sometimes I would just be like, oh, I could flip ahead to page, 200 whatever and be naughty, or I could turn to page 87. So I would like hold my finger in between the two.
Okay.
And I'd go and be naughty for a minute.
This is like the old school way of reading Choose Your Own Adventure.
That's how I would do it. I'd be like, do you want to go on the train or on the bus?
And then you would like die.
I'd be like, let me see
how
I
gotta
the bus
go back.
works out. Let me just, oh, no, it's awful.
Yeah,
Okay,
go back. Bus crashed. We're done. Like,
So. And there were some of these where no matter what you did, you still ended up making love in the hay.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'm not mad at that. But he was lovely, and it ended up wrapping up in this interesting mystery type spy situation that I wasn't expecting.
Okay, yeah. I remember I got to that point at some time,
Did
but
you make that
I chose not to be
you
a
didn't
spy.
spy. See, I was like, I'm going to be a strong, independent woman. Let me just try not to go with my burning loins and go in the direction of like, I am independent. And I did, and it was okay.
Yeah. Maybe not as hot in the hay.
It wasn't as hot in the hay as it was before.
So I kind of did the first read of my story very similar, where I wanted to stick through with the one person that I was attracted to and just go with that unless they like, you know, really piss me off. And then I'd be like, okay, fuck off. But so I went, instead of going with the Scotsman.
Yes.
That wasn't Scottish. Instead of going with the Scotsman, I decided to pursue Sir Benedict Granville. And he was one of the party goers and invites us to his estate for, you know, a week-long party, because that's how they did it then, right? It wasn't like dinner. It was like, stay for the week.
It's an event.
Yeah. So I went to his week-long party, and then it turned into another mystery where his, like, bastard brother showed up and is like, I'm there, and he's like, oh no, and then
sounds riveting.
Yeah, oh no. So then you have the option to, are you like, oh, this is too much drama, I'm gonna go, or do you stay and like, intrigue is afoot, you must investigate. I liked that. I watched a lot of mystery shows, so I was all about solving this mystery. We ended up at a whorehouse at one point to dig up information, you know, as you do, and and then we made love in the carriage ride on the way back to the estate. Nice jostle in the carriage. And I mean, it was fun. It was a good one. I felt like of the two reads that I did, because we're each going to share two stories that we took, it was definitely the most complete, because that's the one thing I found with this book, is that sometimes because there's so many options, you have to kind of go into it thinking this is just going to be fun. This isn't going to be like the most
I may not get the payoff
story-driven piece of literature.
Arcs.
Yes. So I definitely did not have the most. He was fine. He wasn't as riveting.
You said boring the first time. You were like, he was boring.
He was the safe choice. He was the safe choice. My second read was not quite as safe.
Was it Lord Craven?
For a while, yeah. I decided to like hoe it up in the second one. So anytime I had the chance to fuck someone, I did.
Make the dirty decisions.
Yeah. So the second read was a lot more fun. The second one I did, I started with the Scotsman.
Yes.
And then we went to the orphanage, but then the orphanage like burned down at some point.
It's a downer.
I was like, that's too much work. I'm just going to move on. So then I went to Broody Craven.
Yes.
Then there's like this whole drama of Craven's wife. Is she dead? Is she a ghost? Is he a werewolf? They really do play up every possible romance trope that you could ever have in one book. So if you're looking for that, here it is.
I know, right?
And then my favorite part was that even after I got through all the ghost and werewolf bullshit, I ended up with the postman that just like lived in the carriage house. You go through this whole story, and then, oh, do you stick by his side, or do you run off with that guy you met 10 pages ago? And
I remember that decision. I
good.
stayed with him.
Yeah.
His weird werewolf house.
Yeah. But
so you did the cute postman. Okay.
But I took the postman and got some really great, that was my favorite excerpt that I'll totally share with everybody, is it was so much postman innuendo in one page.
It's
great. There was like
wonderful.
licking those stamps, or, you know, like pressing that packet. Yeah, I liked it.
It's a good one.
It's a good one. But yeah, so my second read, I decided to try and kind of explore a lot of the different options, because one of the cool things is that if you do start to read it and you're like, I'm not digging this guy anymore, or like, this is boring, you can just like find an option that will have you like fucking off to Egypt. Like, you did that.
I did it.
Yeah. Tell them about Egypt.
Well, okay, first I did Scotsman. I did like, oh, sensitive. And then I did Craven, because I'm like, ooh, vampires, dark. Yay.
Twilight. There it is.
It was Twilight. So I was like, okay, let's go back there for like a minute. Mm-hmm. And then I was like, oh, this is weird. So then this morning I woke up and I was like, what's going on in Egypt? Like, whatever. And it starts off with this intrigue where it's this woman, and it's a little lesbianist in the beginning. Mm-hmm. And
Lady Evangeline.
Lady Evangeline. Yeah. She's like, come with me on this adventure. I'm an archaeologist and I want to take you to Egypt. And I was like, okay. So we went.
I've never been to Egypt.
I've never been. Okay. I've watched The Mummy. Brendan Fraser here. So anyway, we're in Egypt, and she's like, I need to decipher this thing. Would you like to stay with me and decipher it? And the story kind of guided me to not do that. It was like, would you like to stay in this boring building and sit and decipher things with this beautiful goddess? And I'm like, no. Or would you like to go to the marketplace with Kamal, or whatever his name was? And I was like, marketplace.
Yes.
So, because I felt like the book was telling me to do that anyway.
Right.
So we went off to the marketplace. And then, and we went with 2 guards, and you have a moment where you're like, why do we need guards? But then
more mystery and intrigue.
More mystery and
Love
intrigue.
it.
And then you discover that the man that's been hired to protect you is actually an enemy, and he wants to like swoop you up and kidnap your ass. So there was a choice of, do you flee and just leave Kamal behind, like, bye, I'm getting out of here, or do you try to fight off the bandits or whatever?
You know, it really makes me wonder about the authors and just kind of like the choices that they would make and like what it says about them that they're putting those in.
I feel like you're guiding me to just leave every man in my life and just be a badass, which is great.
There were potential endings where you could leave and like go to America and just
start a new life
on your own. So I mean, there's definitely a nice range of potential stories.
But I was leaned to adventure every time.
Yeah.
So like, who wants to?
So you went with the bodyguard.
So I went with the bodyguard, got some Stockholm syndrome, and there was a fantastic tent scene that was hilarious.
like an actual tent.
An actual tent.
Okay, got it.
Where you were like, do you try to escape and fight him off, or do you just kind of seduce him and then escape? I'm like, well, you seduce him and then escape.
I mean, if you have the option,
just get a little bit and then go on your merry way into the desert.
Great.
So basically it wrapped up with I guess he was working for boring archaeologist's ex-lover. Oh. And there was a confrontation where it was the ex-lover and Evangeline, and she like bares her breast and she's like, shoot me where it matters, or I don't but she was like, if it's gonna end, it should end here. And I'm just kind of sitting back like with the homeboy kidnapper man, like, what's gonna happen? And then you can either choose to, you know, let's be honest, with Evangeline and her girlfriend.
Yeah, there were a couple options of ending up with a woman, so I did like that.
So I kind of read that one, and then I read the other option, and I did it that way. I cheat. I want to know what happens.
That's like back with the Choose Your Own Adventure books. Everybody cheated. Like everybody always like peeked ahead, and then it'd be like, "Oh, that's grim. Okay, nope, going back."
I'm going back. So I did that. I got it. And then if I lost my bookmark, God forbid, I'd be like, "No, it's chaos.
That's it. You'll never find it again. You'll
never find it again.
Never find it.
Where's that picture with the guy with his shirt off? It was there, and then there it is.
That's how we marked pages in this book. Was like, okay, wait, go back to the graphic where he's like leaning on his side and like his chest is out. Like, oh, found it. Great.
There it is.
Yeah,
okay.
So that's your only hope.
Now I'll go to the ball. Like, it's just, it's fun.
Exactly. So, I mean, while we're on the subject, you mentioned that your favorite excerpt that you had read was from the Egypt story. So this is the part of the show where we share our favorite excerpts from whatever piece of literature we're reading this evening.
Yeah.
So I've got one. I have to share the Postman.
Please read the Postman while I track down the sexting in a tent.
Absolutely. Okay. Here we go, Mr. Postman. And we start with, he helps you into his humble home and frees your body from your dress as gently as one would open a stolen letter from 'neath its seal. Oh, we're just getting started. His hands trace the outline of your breasts with wonder and skill. Your nipples harden at the touch of his work-roughened fingers, and he licks their cherry tips with a tongue made strong from licking countless envelopes. That's my favorite part. He sets that same tongue to the task of running the length of your midsection all the way down into the plush pocket of your sex. Not my favorite word for vagina.
I wouldn't call it a pocket. It's not a hot pocket.
Especially pocket. I'm like
what?
Nah. There, your pocket, there. Okay. He pushes into you with the soft pressure of a first-class stamp. And then this is his dialogue. This gets me every time. Here we go. If you want a man to tell you what to do, here it is. The mail always comes on time in my district. And then he adds, he whispers to you, if you know what I mean.
If you know what I mean. I knew what you were saying.
Yeah, we got it.
I
got it. But yeah, so the end.
I know what you mean. My penis.
That's actually the end of that story too. I should clarify.
Okay, are you ready for the desert? Here it goes.
Here we go, Egypt.
I don't know if I can do this with a straight face. Method. Okay, you are the charmer, and I am the snake, he says, before filling your mouth with a kiss that makes you strain against your bindings for more. You're kidnapped at this point. P.S. That is the bindings.
Oh, it's the bondage thing.
But let this snake dance for you.
Dance, snake.
You are heady with not knowing where his charmed snake tongue will strike next. You kiss, hungrily, deeply, softly, as soon as your sex is filled with the charm of Fabian's agile tongue and clever fingers. Yes, you cry. Oh, yes. You think you will wake the spirit of Nefertiri with your pleasure. With only a vague memory of what you started. You were... Oh, I lost my place.
You'll never
the evacuation of your desire. It just, that's hilarious.
The evacuation of your desire. Wow. Yeah, it's definitely the word choice in this book is
fun.
Great.
It's just fun.
Yeah, like if you're a lot of people think of romance and they think, oh yeah, it's like his pulsating member and the pockets of her sex.
Her
yeah, you're gonna get that in this book
with snow and ice.
Yeah,
no.
Every single one. And we talked about it before, but I think perhaps the best part of this book are the choices that you get to make. So we thought, like, along with the excerpts, which are so-so,
they're good. They're fun.
Very, very fun, we would share a couple of those because that's really where the fun is. So did you have one to start?
Oh, I got one. Yeah. So a big cliffhanger happens. He says, this. He leans in and he tries to kiss you. It says, do you let him? Hell yes, turn to 334. Or hell no, turn to 258.
Straightforward.
Simple, to the point.
Yeah, there we go. Okay.
Hilarious.
Mine's like a little less straightforward, but I enjoy it. It starts with, it's decision time. Do you throw caution, decorum, and all other respectable nouns to the wind in order to follow Lady Evangeline into the unknown? If so, turn to page 128. Or do you value your limbs still being attached to your body and decide to sit this one out? If so, turn to page 71.
I love it.
Yeah, lots of fun. There are a lot of pages that you'll find where sometimes you don't get a choice. This is one. Feeling like you don't have a choice? You chose to be a governess in a mad lord's mansion flung far on the moors. Get used to it. Turn to page 248.
Do you give him a piece of your mind? Turn to 293. Do you give him a piece of your body? Turn to 329.
Yes.
Or when you're making love in the haystacks, go see to the child, you neglectful hussy. Turn to 155.
Yeah, exactly. So taking all that into consideration, is this a book that you enjoyed?
Yes. It was fun. I feel like it's one of those in-between books when you're reading like two really good, meaty books, like you're reading about Obama or something. Mm-hmm. And then you're reading about like a World War II survivor. But then this is like the in the middle one where you're like, I need a breather. I need to like not think. I need to just chill out and maybe fantasize about shirtless men.
And like, you can just read one. You don't have to read the whole. Neither of us have read all the stories.
Nope.
I actually saw somebody post on Twitter about how they tried to make a diagram of all the possible directions you could go in. And I couldn't follow it. I don't know how she followed it. So it's. I really would love to know how many options there are, but that's going to take some more time. Yeah. Is this a book you would recommend to somebody to read?
Yeah, I would. Under the right, as long as they know what they're getting into.
Yeah.
If I say, here's a romance novel, it's a
really
breed
not.
of its own. It's really not.
Yeah.
It's a commentary on romance novels.
Yes, and choose your own adventure, for sure.
And choose your own adventure. So I don't know. I'm like, if you want a fun read, yes, I would recommend this.
Yeah.
This is fun.
As somebody who's read a lot of romance novels, I think people who do read romance would actually appreciate it a lot just because you're going to understand a lot of the tropes and the stereotypes and the different types of characters that you would typically see in romance. For people who have never read a romance, never had interest in reading romance, I would also recommend it for you because it really isn't your typical standard romance novel. You're going to get adventure, mystery. There's lots of sub-stories. So definitely worth checking out.
And it's also like in the peering that I've done in the romance aisle, I've found like a lot of DIDs, a lot of damsel in distresses. They're just like, oh my gosh, I fell out of my carriage.
No, not this girl.
All these tricks are like really, really
hardcore. You can tell that this is like feminist writers writing a modern woman that just happens to be set in a different time period.
All strong-willed, cool, awesome girls.
It's pretty good. It's pretty good. So the last thing we'll do is we ask our readers to grade the story and give The story itself a grade, also the syntax and the sexcapades of the novel. So on a scale of 1 to 10, what would you give this story? And it's hard to say just because it's not one story.
Right. I would probably say like a 7.
Okay.
Because, you know, I didn't like how they wrapped up. They felt like they needed to wrap up really quick in the end of each storyline.
Yeah.
It was just fast. Like, oh, by the way, we're all friends now. Or, oh, by the way, we're all spies. And it's like, but I want to see a little. I'd rather them have 3 longer stretched out.
To have more details.
Yes.
Yeah.
I would have liked that.
For me, it felt like reading a quiz out of like Cosmo magazine. Like, A, do you like brunettes? B, do you like this? And kind of like, oh, if you chose mostly A's, you're going to end up with this. So it was kind of more like a game, which I, felt when I watched Bandersnatch too, was sort of like that game element. So if you like that, it's probably all for you. I gave it a 7 as well. Yeah. Okay. How about for the syntax? So the style of writing, the word choice.
I'd say probably like a 5.5, 6.
5.5, 6.
Just because when they did get into the descriptive words and stuff, it was almost, they were dancing so much on the line of comedy and like seriousness,
mocking
it, where I was like, oh, I don't know if I can get on board with heaving melons. Like, I just
see, and I'm wondering if because I'm a romance reader, I gave it an 8 because I actually was happy to embrace the fact that they were kind of like mocking the genre, because I knew that it was like a playful tone. So and then sexcapades, last but not least.
Sexcapades.
What did you think?
I'd probably give it like a 7.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm going to say 7.
That's generous.
Because I was mildly intrigued, ooh, what's going to happen next?
Yeah, a lot of variety. I mean, in a carriage, in the hay. Whatever.
The carriage. Like, that's all good times.
Yeah,
but
good stuff.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
Not over the top. Oh, my God.
Yeah, it was, again, not very explicit, so, wasn't my favorite. Right. But I gave it a 5. So, I know what I want. And with that, we will wrap it up and say thank you. Check us out. We're on Twitter, Instagram, @Boobies Podcast. And that's our show.
Thank you, guys.
Yay.